Imagine this. You've poured years into a company, climbed all the way up the ladder, top executive, and then boom, fired, just like that. Cold, brutal. That exact moment, back in 1978, this corporate exile, it didn't just end a career. It actually sparked an $8.9 billion empire. And maybe even more surprising, it fueled this massive transformation of a major city neighborhood that had been pretty much forgotten. We're talking about Arthur Blank today, the co-founder of the Home Depot, now owns the Atlanta Falcons, Atlanta United soccer team. And he's become this major philanthropist, especially with his work in Atlanta's Westside.
Right. And our mission here in this deep dive is to really dig into the sources you sent over. We want to piece together the blueprint. How did he do it? Because it's this fascinating mix, isn't it? There's the ruthless business strategy, clearly born from that really tough firing. But then there's also this layer of conscious capitalism, very deliberate. So we're trying to figure out how that corporate rejection turned into the spark for a retail revolution and, eventually for healing parts of a city.
Exactly. The billions grabbed the headline, sure. But the story underneath, that intense drive that came after the failure, that's what we want to unpack. Okay, let's get into it. From exile to, urban healer. So we have to start right there with that firing. It's 1978. Arthur Blank and Bernie Marcus, their partners, high up at Handy Dan Home Improvement.
Yeah, they were running things.
Totally. Then there's some kind of corporate shakeup, a power shift, and they get called into a meeting. Fired. Just like that. Our sources say it was incredibly cold, sudden. For them, it felt like losing everything, their professional identity, their legacy, just devastating.
And that feeling, that devastation is really key because instead of, getting lawyers and fighting it out, which they could have done, they took all that energy, that rejection, and channeled it into something totally new, radical, really. They basically asked, what's wrong with home improvement stores right now?
Almost wrong.
Well, they saw them as cramped, kind of confusing places, overpriced, hard to find what you needed, let alone get good advice.
Yeah.
So their answer, the Home Depot. And you have to remember, this is the late 70s. The idea was audacious.
Right. Not just another hardware store.
Not at all. Think massive warehouse, bright lights, stocked floor to ceiling. Almost overwhelming, maybe, but in a good way. Tons of choices, but crucially, expert staff walking the aisles ready to help, and everyday low prices. They wanted to take the fear out of DIY projects for the average person.
And the experts at the time, the retail analysts.
Oh, they thought Blank and Marcus were completely nuts. Seriously. They called the whole big box idea reckless.
Why reckless? Too big.
Yeah, too much space, too much inventory tied up. They argued the mass market for that kind of DIY approach just didn't exist yet, or so they thought.
But the customers?
The customers loved it almost instantly. They voted with their feet and their wallets.
And growth just took off from there.
It was incredible. Founded in 79, they did their IPO just 2 years later, 1981. By 2001, when Blank stepped down as CEO, they had something like, over 1,100 stores? It was an explosion.
Okay, here's a number that just floors me, and it really shows the scale of what they built out of that initial failure. Imagine you, listening right now, had put just $1,000 into that Home Depot IPO back in 1981. Shares were $12 then. If you just held on to it, reinvested the dividends, that $1,000 would be worth over $5.3 million by 2025. Wow. $5.3 million. From $1,000. It's just, yeah.
It's insane. And it perfectly illustrates what happens when that kind of intense drive hits a real market need. But you raised a good point earlier, that kind of explosive growth, it often leads to companies just collapsing under their own weight, right? The infrastructure can't keep up. Blank knew that was a risk.
Right. So how do they manage it? How do they scale without imploding? This is where Blank's idea of smart scale comes in. He wasn't just building a chain, he wanted an institution, something lasting.
And that sustainability, based on the sources, seems to come down to two core principles. And interestingly, both feel like a direct reaction to what he hated about his old job at Handy Dan, the micromanagement, the lack of trust.
Okay, what's the first one?
First was operational autonomy. They basically flipped the script. Headquarters didn't know best. They trusted the store managers, trained them, empowered them, told them, run this store like it's your own business, like an entrepreneur.
So the managers decided on local inventory, marketing, that kind of thing.
Exactly. They could adapt to what their specific community needed. That distributed leadership kept the whole massive thing from grinding to a halt. It prevented that bureaucratic bottleneck.
It's like he gave them the control he felt was taken from him. Makes sense. What was the second principle?
That one was customer obsession. And this was non-negotiable. Everyone in the corporate office, from Blank himself down to, entry-level analysts, everyone had to work 1 day a month out on the floor, in the store aisles, wearing the orange apron.
Seriously, even the CFO or the top legal counsel, they're out there dealing with returns or helping someone find drywall screws.
Yep, no exceptions. The sources are clear on that. The idea was simple. If you're making decisions that impact the stores, you damn well better know what it feels like to be in the store.
Huh. I can just picture that.
It forced humility, right? It kept the executives connected to the actual customer, the actual product. Prevented that ivory tower disconnect that sinks so many big companies.
That focus on process and people, it clearly worked. Build a giant. But okay, you've done it. You've conquered retail, made billions. What drives you next?
It seems like Blank wasn't just after money. He wanted something more. Platforms. Influence.
That shift really seems to happen after he leaves Home Depot day to day. In 2002, he buys the Atlanta Falcons, paid $545 million then. Now it's worth, over $4 billion?
Wow.
And then later he starts Atlanta United, the MLS team, which was hugely successful right out of the gate. This wasn't just buying toys. He was moving from building a business to building civic institutions.
Using sports as a platform.
Exactly. And this is where his mantra really comes into play. If your business doesn't serve something larger than itself, it will eventually shrink. He started applying that same discipline, that same system-building approach from Home Depot, but now the product was more like community pride, connection, impact. Let's talk about that discipline for a second, because it's kind of remarkable. He's made his fortune. He could easily just, disappear onto a yacht.
Right. Sail off into the sunset.
But he doesn't. He keeps this incredibly structured daily routine, wakes up early, works out, pores over reports. Work is still central to his identity, clearly.
Absolutely. And that intensity, it feeds directly into how he sees ownership, his idea of stewardship. He has this saying, you can't manage what you don't touch. You really see that in action with the Mercedes-Benz Stadium project. That was a $1.6 billion project, opened in 2017. He wasn't just signing checks.
I remember hearing stories about him being on site constantly during the build.
He was. He insisted on walking that massive facility every single week. And not just a quick look around. He checked the flow in the seating areas. He'd inspect the restrooms for cleanliness. And yes, he personally taste tested the concession food.
Get out. He's taste testing hot dogs while overseeing a billion-dollar build.
Yeah.
Sounds funny, but it shows that commitment to getting every detail right, the total fan experience. Operational excellence down to the smallest thing.
That's definitely touching what you manage. It really drives home that personal motto of his, there is no finish line.
And you see how deep that runs when you consider his health challenges.
Yeah.
The sources mention his prostate cancer diagnosis in 2016. He kept working through the treatment, kept that schedule, held meetings, directed strategy. He showed up. It was leadership by example, reinforcing that idea.
Yeah.
You keep going. There's always more to do.
So it's clear he saw these sports teams. And remember, Atlanta United was leading the entire league in attendance for years. He saw them as more than just games. They were engines for community impact. And he really did things differently than a lot of owners, didn't he? Like providing full health benefits to every single employee.
Yeah, from the janitorial staff right up to the GM. That's a huge commitment, especially in the sports world. Plus, opening up training facilities for local school kids, pouring millions into scholarships, neighborhood grants.
It's a different model. It really is. It's moving from just running a business to trying to engineer positive civic outcomes. And that got seriously tested with the location of the new stadium.
Right, because he chose to build it right next to Atlanta's Westside, an area with deep historical roots, but also facing really significant poverty and neglect for decades. Critics were worried.
And rightly so. A massive $1.6 billion project landing next door. The fear was obvious. Gentrification, pushing out long-term residents. It's the classic problem.
So how did he address that? Because it's easy to talk about community benefit, but much harder to actually deliver it without causing displacement.
That was the tightrope walk. And Blank's response was pretty direct. He famously said something like, if this stadium doesn't elevate the neighborhoods around it, it's a failure. He essentially tied the stadium's legacy, its moral success, directly to the well-being of Vine City and English Avenue next door. It wasn't just about profit. It was about uplift.
And that led him into this really deep personal mission on the West Side.
Yes. This became, arguably, his most complex undertaking, revitalizing a historically significant area that had been struggling for so long.
How did he approach it? What made it different?
The key difference, according to the sources, was the philosophy. Revival, not rescue. And empowerment, not dictation. This wasn't about him riding in as the billionaire savior with all the answers. It was about partnership, actively working with the people already there, the residents, the church leaders, the schools, listening first.
That distinction feels really important.
Yeah.
Not charity from above, but investment in the community's own vision.
Exactly. And the scale of that investment grew significantly. He started the Westside Neighborhood Prosperity Fund with, I think, an initial $15 million.
Okay.
But that was just the beginning. By 2025, when you factor in direct and indirect investments tied to his foundation, it's over $120 million poured into that specific area.
And what did that money actually do? What kind of projects?
It focused on fundamentals. Things like preserving affordable housing, creating community gardens for better food access, job training programs designed for residents to get jobs at the stadium and elsewhere, cleaning up parks, making spaces safe and usable again.
Like the Rodney Cook Senior Peace Park. I read about that. Turning a neglected, flood-prone lot into something beautiful and functional.
Precisely. It's both a physical and symbolic change. And that whole approach, the partnership model, the focus on preventing displacement while investing heavily, that's what urban planners are looking at now. How do you use wealth for regeneration without triggering destructive gentrification?
It's almost like the Home Depot autonomy principle applied to philanthropy. Give the community control over the funds, let them drive the plan.
That seems to be the parallel, yes. Funding their vision, not imposing his own.
Okay, let's circle back to that core idea that seems to drive everything for him. There is no finish line. Being a billionaire wasn't the end goal. It was just, maybe, the starting point for the next phase.
Absolutely. He's well into his 80s now and still maintains this intense schedule. The discipline just doesn't quit. Retirement, in the traditional sense, just doesn't seem to be in his vocabulary.
And his philanthropy reflects that long-term system-building mindset, too, right? It's not just about giving money away.
Not at all. He builds systems designed to outlast him. The foundation's given away over $1.3 billion, sure, but it's also committed hundreds of millions more to tackling huge, complex issues. Climate change resilience, youth mental health, more affordable housing, big long-term plays.
He signed the Giving Pledge, obviously, but his focus seems more on, like, future-proofing the impact. I saw something about a 10-year plan for rural health access.
Yeah, launched in 2025, targeting underserved areas in Georgia and Montana. It includes things like mobile health units, boosting telemedicine infrastructure. It's all about creating sustainable access, scalable delivery systems.
So when you boil it all down, what's the ultimate vision here?
I think he put it quite simply himself. Wealth just amplifies who you already are. If your values are clear, if you have generosity built in, then wealth becomes this incredibly powerful fuel for doing good on a massive scale. His real legacy, the real empire he's building now, isn't stores or stadiums. It's maybe more intangible. Systems of trust, platforms for access, creating genuine hope, trying to make sure the people coming up behind him aren't forgotten.
So wrapping this up for you, our listener, the big takeaway from Arthur Blank's story seems to be about intentionality, about deciding what your impact will be. He took that brutal firing, that rejection, and used it to build tools for people with Home Depot. Then he used his success to build platforms to connect and, in some ways, heal a city. It's a remarkable arc, turning personal pain into public purpose.
It really drives home that idea, doesn't it? That the richest life isn't measured by the number in your bank account, but by the positive impact, the systems you build that continue working long after you're gone. Lasting value.
So here's the final thought to leave you with, building on Blank's own motto. If you truly believed there was no finish line for your own efforts, whether personal or professional, what long-term system, what foundational commitment would you start building today?